tonight. Remember, I've been showing you things from my friend that wanted you to see things made in Israel. This is a scarf, and the lady who loaned it to us actually bought it in a shop on the same street where Jesus carried his cross. And she wanted you to see it. It's beautiful, and it will be in the jewelry tent so you can look at it up close. Just don't handle it. Just look at it, okay? But she wanted you to see that because, again, all week we've been talking about a couple of things. We've been talking about a lot. But we've been talking about how the stories I tell you are pretend. No, they're what? They're real. And Jesus was a real person who lived in a real country that still has real people living there today who make beautiful things like this. And we want you to know that. So here we go. Some of you have your parents or your grandparents or your friends. We're going to show off a little bit. You're going to get to show them some of the things we've talked about. So think back to the very first night we were together, and we talked about how God works in what kind of ways? Big. Very good, big ways. That's what we talked about the first night. Maybe?
Maybe it isn't on.
There we go. All right, let's say our Bible verse together. Ready? The angel said to her, "Do not be afraid, Mary. You have found favor with God." Luke 1:30. Awesome. And we talked about how God worked in those really big ways, that he had those big miracles that he did to protect his people and to show them how much he cared for them. And then the second night we talked about how God works in
Unexpected.
That's right, unexpected ways. And we learned about this godly woman. What was her name? Elizabeth. Excellent. And her husband had kind of a weird name. What was his name? That's right. And they were old. And they had a baby because God allowed it. And our Bible, this is one of my favorite Bible verses. And this afternoon, when it was pouring rain, this was my very favorite Bible verse. Let's say it together. For nothing is impossible with God. Luke 1:37. That's absolutely right. And that third night, we had the story of the birth of the baby Jesus. Do you guys remember that? And we talked about how God works in small ways. That's right. And let's say this Bible verse together. Ready? And she brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. Luke 2:7. And then last night we heard that incredible story about the angels. You guys remember the angels and how they visited the shepherds? And we learned how God works in glorious. That's right, glorious ways. And our Bible verse, let's say it together. Suddenly, a great company of the heavenly host appeared with the angels, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace to men." Luke 2:13-14. Well, tonight we're going to continue our journey into Jesus' early life. We're going to look at a way that God worked in a protective way. And that means that God was looking out for the people in our story. And you're going to get to see how that all worked. But you know what I find interesting about our story so far is the difference between some of the people in the Old Testament and some of the people in the New Testament. Remember King Pharaoh? He had to suffer through 10 plagues, horrible pain and suffering and grief, for him to believe in God and to get that God meant business. The Israelites, they watched that parting of the Red Sea and they walked through it on dry land, and as soon as they get to the other side and things get hard, they start whining and complaining and blaming Moses and telling them they should have just been left in Egypt. Israelites saw God work these huge miracles. He fed them manna every single morning. He gave them fresh water. He protected them from their enemies. He stopped the flow of the Jordan River. He practically handed the city of Jericho to them on a golden platter. But they were what? They were whiners and complainers. And they doubted God over and over. But then we hear about this girl named Mary. And Mary, she's really just a kid. She's a teenager. And this angel comes to her and tells her she's going to conceive a child. And she's just an ordinary girl. And we hear about this guy named Joseph, who's a carpenter. Just an ordinary guy who's really in love with this girl, but she tells him something that's so upsetting he doesn't know what to do. And an angel comes to him, and he chooses to believe, and he chooses to obey. Both of these people chose God's way. No big production, no huge miracle that they could see, just a visit from an angel, which of course is pretty big, and words from the Father. That's what I want to be like. I want to be like Mary and Joseph, don't you? I want to trust God and obey Him. And I want to do it without whining and complaining. So anyway, back to our story. So we know that the angels came to the shepherds to tell them about baby Jesus. The Bible also tells us about 3 men who lived in some countries over to the east, and they saw a star that God placed in the sky to announce Jesus' birth. Sometimes these men are called magi. Say magi.
Magi.
That's right. And that's another word for king. See the star? And this star had been talked about in prophecies in the Old Testament. And these wise men knew these prophecies. And they knew astronomy. Astronomy is the study of the sky. And so when they saw this star in the sky, they knew that it meant the Messiah had been born. So they started off on a journey to find the Christ child. They followed the star, and on their way to see Jesus, they stopped by to see Herod. Say Herod. Herod. That's right. And Herod was the king. He was the king of the Jews. And the Magi assumed that he would know what was going on, but what they didn't know was King Herod was really an evil guy. He wasn't very nice. And he also didn't know his scriptures. He didn't know what the prophecy meant. So when the wise men came to him and said, the Messiah has been born, the King of the Jews has been born, and we're on our way to worship him, King Herod panicked, and he went to his priest and he said, dude, you got to tell me what's going on with this, because I know nothing about what these guys are talking about, but this could be bad for me. And so the priest looked and they told him, and they said that the scriptures predicted that the child would be born in a city of Bethlehem. So Herod went back to the wise men, and he kind of tricked them a little bit. He said, listen guys, you go find this Christ child, and you worship and you visit, but on your way back to your country, stop in and let me know where he is so I can go see him. Well, the wise men thought he was sincere. They thought he was serious. So they leave to go on their journey to find Jesus. Well, what they didn't know was Herod had a plan. Because Herod was afraid that if this king of the Jews survived and grew up, that he would take his power away from him. And he would take his country away from him. So he became very desperate. And he decided that he would find every baby born about the same time that the wise men first saw that star, and he was going to kill them. And the wise men didn't know anything about that. And here's the thing. King Herod was a very, very powerful man. And he was ruthless. And ruthless means he would stop at nothing to get his way. And so, unless God were to intervene, it was almost certain that baby Jesus would die. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I'm hoping that God's going to act to protect that baby. So let's continue through the marketplace tonight and see what happens next. Shalom! Shalom.